Alrighty, gentlemen, this morning I want to base what we're going to talk about from Proverbs 31. In the group of 60 verses that are 60 passages of scripture that we've been challenged to read and work through, this is one of them there. And as I look through the verses, I think between a third and a half of the verses I already memorized myself. So when I've challenged you to choose a new verse to memorize, I've decided to memorize this passage here from Job. Of course, Job 31:1, most of us are aware of, and I've memorized it. But the rest of it from 4 to 9 is new to me to memorize. And this morning I want to walk with you Job 31, 1 to 12. The more I meditate on this, the more it is just giving me a right and a left and a right and a left. It's just really setting me down. And so I'm really asking God to work this in my heart. I've so far affectionately called this chapter of Job the recovery covenant. So all we're going to do is just look at what Scripture says, verse by verse. So if you have availability of a Bible or a phone beside you with the Bible on it, we're just going to look at the first 12 verses of Job 31, and I'm going to tell you what I'm learning, what I'm thinking here, because this is the verses that I'm memorizing. These 12. I know you're only supposed to memorize 5. I'm a keener, whatever. Okay. So let's walk through this.
Job 12.
1 to 12. Yeah.
But what chapter though?
31.
31. Okay.
Okay. So I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. Covenant's an agreement, a commitment, a contract. I give my word. You understand covenant, right? All right. And then it says, with my eyes, it says that's the visual gift that God has given me. My eyes are my responsibility. I'll say that again. My eyes are my responsibility because I make a covenant, an agreement, a commitment, a contract. I give my word before God that I make a covenant with my eyes, the visual gift God given me. What I take in through my eyes feeds my mind, feeds my heart, feeds my spirit, just like what I eat through my mouth, because my mouth is my responsibility too, right? It feeds my body. So on a healthy diet with my eyes and a healthy diet with my mouth will actually kill me. You see, when I make a covenant with my eyes to not look, it says to not look. See, there's a choice there. Look, not look. Okay? Remember Sesame Street? This program is brought to you by the word look. Look, not look. Look, not look. Like it can't be any simpler, guys. I mean, straightforward. I make a choice not to look. Don't look. You see, I've been told from when I was little, and I don't see this often in my world, but my father had friends who were welders, and my uncles were farmers, and they would weld machinery, to fix things. And I was told, remember about a welder's torch? What are you told? Don't look at it because the blue light will burn the retina of your eyes. How early are we telling kids not to look at the sun? Why? Because you look at the sun for long, it burns the retina of your eyes. See, don't look at it. When it says don't look, it's a choice. It goes on to say not to look how? Lustfully, longingly, with a sexual desire, where you're undressing her, you're imagining her frame. That's clearly wrongful. Why? Because she isn't mine. I have one I'm to be captivated with. That's my wife. Period. And it says, I made a covenant in my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. Why does it specifically say a young woman? Because there's where likely the greatest trap is, because they're in their prime. They're most desirous in those, late teens, 18, 19, right through to say 20s. They're most desirous, most shapely. They have the pre-baby look. Now, there's a lot of women who take care of themselves later. So it doesn't mean that people 30s and 40s are not catching our eye. But it's very clear. I am not going to look. I'm going to make a choice to not look at a young woman in a shameful, lustful way. That's the first comment. Now, that's the one we all know. Let's look at what else it's saying here. Verse 2 says this, For what is our lot from God above? What is our heritage from the Almighty on high? Now, look at those words. What is our lot? Our lot is what we get from God. It's our inheritance, our reward, his pay. You'll realize all over scripture, it talks about you will reap what you sow. Have you heard that before? Sure we have. You reap what you sow. So what is our lot from God above? It's a blessing if we do what is right with our sexual desires. Because the context here of this whole Job 31 is about handling yourself correctly with regard to the lust factor, the sexual desire factor in your head. That's what this whole thing talks about. And so the blessing, if I do it as right here, with my sexual desires, that's my lot from God. Notice it says our heritage. You know, the Canadian heritage, the Christian heritage, the family heritage. You know what that means? It means our history, our family connection, our traditions, what's passed on to me, what we're proud of. You understand heritage? And you see, like for instance, we have part of the Currie heritage with what I learned from my dad, which I passed on to my kids, is Curries never quit. If you watch us in sports, right down to the grandkids now, we've passed it on to my kids. If you saw my kids play sports, whether it was college basketball or junior hockey, they was just part of it and was never quit. And you see, so that's something we're proud of. What else we're trying to be proud of is the fact that we really let Jesus transform our life. But you see, our heritage, that's what we stand for. You see? And so when it says, what is our lot, our reward, our inheritance, our pay from God above? What is our heritage? What we stand for because God's on high? You got the principles now. Look at verse 3. Is it not ruin for the wicked and disaster for those who do wrong? Do you remember reap what we sow? Okay. It's couldn't be any clearer. Let's be clear. Ruin and disaster. Ruin and disaster. Now, I don't know what you do with those words. You know, this program is brought to you by ruin and disaster. If you go in the direction that is opposite number one, if you don't make a covenant to walk in purity, your lot will be ruin and disaster. You get this one wrong and it'll destroy your life. You'll notice in a few of the verses later what happens. We'll hit it, but it messes up your vocational life. I've got at least 3 guys who've been fired from their jobs because of their addiction. It'll mess up your family life. Guys sitting around the table today know what that means. Ruin and disaster. You reap what you sow. When you're tempted and don't turn away, there'll be a downward spiral. You know that in James chapter 1, you know, when a person is tempted, they shouldn't say, I'm tempted by God, for God doesn't tempt anyone. Neither is he tempted himself by sin. But when a person is tempted, he's drawn by his own lust and enticed. And when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin when it is finished brings forth death. Can't be any clearer. Downward spiral. You are accountable before God for your sexual control. Clearly, because ruin and disaster if you go the wrong way. Verse 4. Does he not see my ways and count my every step? Rhetorical question. You know what the answer is? Of course he does, duh. Hello? He's omnipresent. He's everywhere simultaneous. And he's omniscient. Means he knows everything. Who are we trying to kid? You think that God doesn't see what you do in secret? I mean, seriously, like, take that one. Like, he sees everything you do, every step you take. He even uses, I count every step. He sees every step you take. He's better than a Garmin. He's better than a Fitbit. He tracks it all. He sees what you do in secret, what you engage in, every person you meet. When you think nobody knows, give your head a shake. Who are you trying to kid? And you know the famous line in our culture, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Not true. What happens in Vegas or anything like that is an instant headline of God's morning paper on you. Instant headline. Here's what Currie's doing. Here's what Currie's doing. Here's what Currie's doing. Here's what Currie's doing. And I'm thinking, nobody knows. Huh? But what's really crippling, if you're not aware, not only does he see what I do, but he knows what I'm thinking. He reads my mind. I mean, scripture is really clear that it says he knows my thoughts. He knows what you're going to think before you think it. He knows your every thought, every glance, every motive. He knows your intention. He knows what you're trying to get away with. So when it says, does he not see my ways and count my every step? The answer is yes, he does. He does. Matter of fact, in that context, it goes on to say, so if I have walked with falsehood, interesting wording, walked with falsehood. Okay, let's just say Chris and I, though we're going to be 6 feet apart because of social distancing, Chris and I meet at Mill Lake, a park here, and we're just going to have a talk about, let's just say how he's doing with losing his job. Let's say he's struggling. Actually, he's doing pretty good. But let's just say we go for this walk around Mill Lake at the social distance. You see, Chris and I are walking together. See, we're walking with each other. See, when it says, if I have walked with falsehood, you see, if I made falsehood my companion, you see, I'm going for a walk with falsehood. Me and falsehood are buddies. What does that mean? It means I'm a lying son of a gun. It means all I do, I walk with falsehood. Me and falsehood are best friends. You can't trust a word that I'm saying. So you understand, I've learned as I've worked with men and loved men through hard stuff, guess what? We are just as addicted to lying as we are to the addiction. Why? Because we walk with falsehood. We live in lies. We're going for a walk in the park with falsehood. If my foot has hurried to deceit. Now, give me a moment to give you a picture of this. My foot has hurried. I've often played a game when I'm speaking to young people, you know, a couple hundred kids out there. And I'm teaching them about faith and taking a person at their word. And they don't really know that. I'm just making my point. But I say, by the way, I'm going to give $20 for the first kid who comes up here. And they're looking and thinking, what is he saying? Now, one kid hears that, and what does he do? Jumps up, comes flying to the front, says, I'll take it. Just kind of trying to be show off in front of everybody. And I pull out a $20 bill, and I give it to him. And he goes, really? Can I have it? I'm keeping it. I said, yeah, I said you could have it. You take me at my word. You're the first one to jump. You get the $20. The kid goes back, oh, wow, I got $20. Kids go, oh, I wish I had done that. But you see what he did? He hurried. He ran. He responded. Now, here's the problem. That was a good thing because he was blessed. But this person jerks the knee. He runs quick. For Spencer, who's the jock who plays so much soccer, it's called quick twitch, Spencer. It's I have this instant move towards what? Towards deceit. Matter of fact, you felt it. When you're lying upon lying upon lying upon lying, you felt it. When someone asks you a question you got to cover for, your mind is hurrying, going, what can I say? What can I say? I'll say this. Then you start speaking it. And your mind is hurrying. What did I say? Okay, I'll say this. What did I say before? I can't say that because I don't think. And your mind's going, wow. Okay, then you say this and you go, yeah, and I'll say it convincingly, and then they'll believe that. You know that feeling, don't you? When you're covering your butt, you know? And so that's what it's saying here. It's nailing the whole part about lying. It goes on in verse 6. Let God weigh me in honest scales. Okay, for the guys who know what this is about. Let God do a flipping polygraph. He's weighing me. See, he's weighing me in honest scales. He's saying, okay, let's see if you're telling the truth. Now, understand that Job at this point here has got his life turned around and is made a covenant not even to look lustfully at a young woman, not even look at her in a wrong way. So he is walking blameless, and he says, okay, God, you weigh me on honest scales. You give me a polygraph. He doesn't need to because God knows the truth. But humanly, that helps a wife sometimes to get the polygraph done. Weigh me in honest scales, and you'll know that I am blameless. Blameless. Powerful word. I just defer for a second, a beautiful passage of scripture in Psalm 5. Psalm 15, rather. I call Psalm 15 the integrity psalm. Lord, who may dwell in your sanctuary? Who may live on your holy hill? He whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart and has no slander in his tongue, who does his neighbor no wrong and casts no slur on his fellow man, who despises the vile man but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps his oath even when it hurts, who lends his money without usury and does not withhold goodness from the wicked. He who does these things will never be shaken, but the man whose walk is blameless. Psalm 15. Notice verse 7. If my steps had turned from the path of right, if my steps, if I've gone off track, if my heart, look at the different things here. If my steps have taken the wrong path, if my heart has been led by my eyes. I remember likely about 22 to 25 years ago, I was helping a young man at Northview, young married man who, if his wife walked by, we'd be tempted to kind of do a rubberneck and look, she's a pretty lady. But he was talking to me about the problem he had with lust, temptation, and porn years ago. And I'll never forget, he said, I actually have clear memories of my dad. He was a contractor and he would be 12, 13 working with his dad, and he'd be driving in the truck with his dad, and you'd see his dad turn and see a pretty woman down the street as if the boy didn't notice what he was doing. And then he said, oh, you know what, son, I got to just turn in to get something from the store here, where the woman was parked with their car. And he would turn in and the boy would sit in the truck and he's watch his dad as he's kind of going to the store, but going by the lady's car and scoping her and then going in and getting something that was, even giving something to his son to make it look like really good. But he said, I remember watching my dad scope women and turn and go back and actually find a way to conveniently see her more because dad was led by his eyes. And he says, I honestly thought at 12, 13 that that's what men do. So he says, I've been doing that my whole life. You see, being led by your eyes. See, that's why it starts with, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. So if my steps have turned the wrong path, if my heart has been led by my eyes, and if my hands have been defiled, oh my goodness. Touching something that's not mine, i.e. another woman. Using one of the gifts a God given me in an inappropriate way. And the truth is, as I look at scripture, I would speak honestly if I could. The scripture does not malign masturbation, but it maligns thinking lustfully after a woman. And why all the addicts I work with, I say masturbation needs to be out for us, all of us. Why? Because the truth is, it's so connected to the wayward thinking. It's so connected with your addiction. So out of solidarity for all of you, I'm up to about, 4 years now of not masturbating, not because it's been my issue or I can't within my marriage and my wife being aware of it. No, I'm not going to do it because I'll say to you guys who say, oh, I can't live without I got you. I say, shut up. Quit your whining. But if my hands have been defiled, the things you've touched, the people you've been with. Number 6, if my heart has been enticed by a woman. One man that I counseled, if I said his name, you would all know him. He was on the political scene for quite some time at the national level. But his game was, he was very, very good with his words. He was a champion of flirting. And he wouldn't necessarily be coy with a woman to try to get her in his hotel room. But he would go to his hotel room kind of knowing, I could have been sexual with her. I had her. And he kept kind of doing this entrapment game. It was the thrill of the chase. And the truth is he did have 7 affairs over his now almost 50 years of marriage. But if his heart had been enticed by a woman, and look at this last one, if I've lurked at my neighbor's door, that means I'm going to try to hang out at a place where I'm going after something that isn't mine. Be careful where you're lurking, guys. Be careful where you're driving, guys. Be careful why you're hanging out with person A, B, or C, because you may be lurking, as it were, at your neighbor's door. A real person that you're tempted by, a real person that you want to just hang out with. Many women over the years have said to me, I don't know, I just feel comfortable. When we're together with Bob and Betty, it just seems that my husband is so interested in Betty that what is she seeing? He's lurking there. He's having fun with her. He's being enticed by her, and he's lurking there. Do you see where that goes? And it's so clear that between the lying about walking in falsehood and hurrying to deceit, and then all these things that my steps have turned from the path, my heart being led by my eyes, my hands have been defiled, my heart enticed by another woman, and I've lurked at my neighbor's door. Do you see this cycle of addiction? Do you see it clearly there? I mean, as I read these verses over and over, it just speaks so clear. And he says, if this happens, then in verse 8, then may others eat what I have sown, and may my crops be uprooted. Now remember, it was an agrarian culture. Primarily, that's what everybody did. So basically, let me completely lose my vocation. Let me be fired from my job. Let me lose my livelihood. This is the big thing, because the first thing men say when we meet new people, hey, what do you do? All right, what do you do? Well, what's your identity? It's wrapped up in your vacation, right? One of the first questions after you where you're from at the border, they ask you, and what do you do? Right? So you understand that he says in verse 8, and then he says in verse 10, verse 8 is my whole livelihood, my identity, my profession. May others have my whole identity, what I've sown, because it's what I reap. My crops uprooted, everything in my career is destroyed. And then in verse 10, may my wife grind another man's bread, and may other men sleep with her. So if I am going to be this way, God judge me in my vocation and judge me within my family. Oh my goodness. That's pretty much the two basic things. Because you see, if I go in the direction of lying and chasing after lustful opportunities, what does it say in verse 11 and 12? That would have been wicked, a sin to be judged. So we can't somehow wonder what he means. I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully after a young woman, because there's where the sin starts. He spells it out about the lying. He spells it out 5 different ways about what it looks like as I'm turning from the other path, led by my eyes, hands have been defiled. So it's a sin to be judged, and it's a fire that burns to destruction. You know what it means? The actual word was Abaddon, which is the Old Testament word for it's the fire that burns all the way to hell. Now, I can't soften what Scripture is saying here, but the warning is pretty significant here. It's something that before God is inappropriate. His word is wicked. It's a sin that will be judged, and it's a fire that burns all the way to hell. Gentlemen, you are on an integrity journey that fully honors God. You know how I say to you guys that I call you to greatness? You know, I say to you guys that God has a plan, and it's not this one that you're carrying out in. Job 31 says it straight. It's the recovery covenant. And the beautiful thing is you reap what you sow. And so verse 8, my career stays intact. My integrity, my reputation stays intact. And verse 10, my family stays together. God will bless you.